Yeah.
And I know that your listeners are a huge fan of this, or at least they know you're a huge fan of this guy. I'm a diehard fan of this guy, and I want to just reiterate, it's Dalvin Cook, and I say my bold prediction, if he stays healthy, he's going to easily top 2,000 total rushing and receiving yards because he's the perfect fit for Kubiak's zone blocking scheme. I'm a diehard fan of Dalvin Cook. I'll get the ugly out of the way. Of course, the injuries are a huge concern. He missed almost all of his rookie campaign outside of 3 games. He missed a ton of time last year, and that has to give you pause for concern. Am I going to put this early second-round pick into a guy that's only going to give me half a season or so? And there's not a great counter to that other than he was mostly healthy through college. Some of these, an ACL is an ACL. The modern science you can come back from a lot more. Last year, you're focused on recovering and rehabbing, and it sometimes might take that full year to get yourself back under, your legs back under you. And I feel like we saw Cook finally get himself together over that last stretch of the season, especially when they got rid of DeFilippo and went to Stefanski and became a little more run-heavy and started to feature Cook. That's when we started to get a taste of, okay, this is what this guy can truly do. So I judge him a lot more based on the last couple games of last season than I do, because that was a lot more comparable to those early rookie games. So I just see this guy that dominated, when he got the touches, was getting a ton of touches and seemed like that next prototypical workhorse guy that would be a featured offense. And then you get Gary Kubiak coming in, who couldn't be better as a bell cow breeder. I did it out. I looked at 22 seasons of Gary Kubiak stats, literally listed out every single running back. 22 seasons. Yeah, I had my girlfriend, want to come to dinner? Yeah, I'll be right there. Just got a couple notes I got to take care of. 22 seasons, like January. I'm looking at Gary Kubiak's running backs. Kind of a psycho I am. But 22 seasons, 15 of them have topped 1,200 yards from scrimmage. Over 13 have been over 1,480. 10 have been over 1,600. So nearly half have gone for 1,600 or more total yards, and 7 have been over 1,800. And when you look at that, so that again, 15 of 22, and 5 of those 7 misses were injury related, whether it was somebody getting hurt and they were dominating and whatnot. When you gave this guy a supreme talent, Gary Kubiak, we're talking about Terrell Davis, Clinton Portis, Arian Foster, all of those guys went for 900 total and 18 plus TD monsters. And you still had no names, Olandis Gary, Mike Anderson, Ruben Drones, Steve Slayton topping 1,510 TDs. So you give me a Dalvin Cook, and this guy I'd say is much closer to the Clinton Portises and Arian Fosters. Not as proven and hasn't shown that he can be those guys over a full season yet, but in the flashes, he just looks much more, not like a pedestrian, like a Mike Anderson, like an Olandis Gary. He looks much more elite in level of the Terrell Davis, Clinton Portises, if he can put it all together. So that's why I think is as long as we get 16, I look for those guys where it's every other box checks other than risk. Because once, if he does have that full 16, I think we all forget about the fact that he had those 2, really cut down short beginning of his campaign. I think this could be the year that really launches him into all right, Dalvin Cook is one of the best backs in the league. He's in the perfect scheme to show that. And by this time next year, we're all taking him in the top 5 or so of our fantasy drafts.
Yep. And, just circling back around to those injuries there. So the first year, obviously, towards ACL.
Yeah.
And the second year, last year, it was a hamstring injury that really stemmed from that ACL recovery, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like you can't label the guy as injury prone. Like, just because a guy goes down with an ACL tear doesn't make him injury prone automatically. Like, that stuff happens, right?
Yeah.
I get it. It was, I believe it was non-contact. We were trying to make a cut.
It was, yeah.
Right. And what was it, like week 4? I think it was week 4 that he went down, right? It was devastating to see, man. But like last year, I know a lot of people were expecting really big things. And, I think the people that aren't going to draft Dalvin Cook are the ones that have really gotten burned from him over the last 2 years. But I want you guys to know, listen, there's no risk of re-injury here. He's more than a year. Almost 2 years removed from that ACL tear. He's going to be a year removed from that hamstring injury. And if you look at weeks 11 to 16 last year, he was the RB9, and that was with Kevin Stefanski. That wasn't even with Gary Kubiak. So I think the addition of Gary Kubiak as an offensive consultant, I think a lot of people are underestimating his role in that offense and the type of modeling that they're going to take from his game. And apply that to Dalvin Cook. So I'm right there with you, man. Dalvin Cook is actually my 6th ranked running back heading into next year.
Nice.
So I'm really high on him. I try to hedge my bet here where I didn't put him in the top 5 just in case. Yeah. But I'm extremely high on him there.
And I think one other thing to mention with him, too, I completely forgot, was a major concern was the line. And I'm not saying overnight they're going to be a million times better, but they did spend the 18th overall pick, their first-round pick, on Garrett Bradbury, a very athletic center. The whole thing on him was he moves well. He's an excellent run blocker. And literally, our guy Dane Brugler, who we love, said like would be ideal fitting for a zone type of blocking scheme, which is, of course, what Gary Kubiak makes his money on, is the zone blocking. So just to add just a little bit of line could make that huge. You can now take the center and move him to guard, and it gives you a little more flexibility. And Gary Kubiak's made a ton of magic out of horrendous lines in the first place. So just to have a little bit more of that added on. He also has a good history of throwing to his running backs too. A bunch of, I think 6 of his last 9 have caught at least 40 balls. And Cook had 40 receptions last year, and that was in this awful kind of scheme while he was injured and for only played 11 games too. So I'm a big fan of that. And you mentioned Stefanski. The last thing here is they went from a 67% pass to 52% pass ratio when they switched from DeFilippo to Stefanski. So I think he's fully on board with that Gary Kubiak, which is historically right around a 50-50 balance. It's not going to be a thing where, Stefanski is technically the OC, whereas Kubiak's the advisor, but they seem very aligned. You got Mike Zimmer as the head coach, a defensive-minded guy. They kind of all just want to feature that run, and they really haven't added much. I've seen a couple people mention, now Alex Madison. Yeah, it's a 4th-round rookie. Definitely gives you a nice little handcuff option, but they have not given him any real competition. So clearly they believe in him right now, right? Like they're all in on Cook, it seems. It's a run-focused offense, and they haven't really done anything other than beef up the line and bring in run-centric minds.
Yep. And Alexander Madison, I think, is a really, really good handcuff to Cook should anything happen. But again, it's not a threat to his primary workload. I don't see him being a threat. Yeah. It's just not going to be just because he does like to feature a workhorse. Gary Kubiak does. So all on board right there with you, Nick. I mean, I love Dalvin Cook this year. Let me ask you a question though.
Sure.
If you had to choose between Dalvin Cook at the 204 going as the RB10 right now, or another injury-prone guy in Leonard Fournette, who's going around later at the 301, who would you want to lean with there?
Definitely Dalvin Cook. I just think the talent when I've watched them play, before I had some beastly runs as a rookie and really did look like a monster at times, but his injuries history dates back to college, and it's more of like the foot and the ankle and the stuff that you just see constantly recurring. And then you look at him, John DeFilippo, we're kind of shitting on it being too pass heavy. That's now the offensive coordinator in the Jacksonville scheme. So it's like, to me, there's so many more boxes checking for Cook in terms of I like the talent better. I think the scheme's going to be better fitting. I like the overall team and the scoring touches he's going to potentially have. It's just all of that checks off so much better for Cook that I'm much more willing to take that 1+ round earlier investment on him than, say, a Fournette. I'm not out on Fournette, but I think often when Fournette goes too, there's guys like Devonta Freeman or sometimes Josh Jacobs as a rookie falls. I could see myself eventually taking David Montgomery, even though he's going around 5 right now. Maybe by draft day, even if he's going around 3. I know the fact that he falls like 5 and 6 blows my mind. I could see him jumping up to round 3 or 4 by the time people realize how much of a workhorse that guy's going to be. But I'm not necessarily avoiding Fournette. He's just a guy I don't see being on a lot of my teams this year. Whereas Cook, I am targeting right there in round 2. I would love to have him this year.
Yep.